Let's talk to former Israeli MP Dr. Einat Wilf and Sanctuary Foundation Director Dr. Krish Kandiah. Thanks both for joining us this morning. And it's all about, Dr. Wilf, how we find some sort of solution to this, isn't it? Whatever the aims of the Israeli government now, it's a case of looking 12 months into the future, isn't it, and say, where do you want to be then?
Indeed. We need to understand that even though most Palestinians are not part of the core of trained Hamas murderers, in that sense, Palestinians are not Hamas, there is massive sympathy for Hamas and for what they did, and a sense that in what they did, they represented the Palestinian cause. This is why you see in Britain, everyone's saying free, free Palestine, which is the idea from the river to the sea, of no state for the Jews in any part of the land. This is a century-long battle that the Palestinians have been waging, initially for the Jews not to have a state, and then for the state to be destroyed. Hamas enjoys as much support as the Nazis did in Germany, even more, as much as Imperial Japan did. So we need to understand that a future can only be built if the Palestinian people as a whole will finally cease constantly creating from within them terror group after terror group in order to free Palestine. There has to be a long-term process, a global process, by which the world helps the Palestinian people finally, after a century, come to terms with the fact that they can develop a constructive vision of having a state for themselves in the West Bank and Gaza next to Israel, but finally cease from having the vision of having a state instead of Israel, or most importantly, that Israel should not exist. This is the ideological basis that created the terror groups that massacred the Israeli athletes in the Munich Olympics. This is the ideology that created the terrorist groups in Fatah over the decades. This is the ideology that creates Hamas today. We're not seeing even one Palestinian demonstration, one lone person standing with a sign and saying, not in my name, this is not what I want. All we see is people in Gaza, when they thought that Hamas has broken in and they just heard about all the atrocities. What we saw was euphoria, the sense that finally, yes, Palestine will be free and the state of Israel will be gone. That's what we're seeing in the Arab world. That's what we're seeing in the demonstrations in New York and London and Berlin. We're seeing that sense that their goal is near. So we need to understand that this is the Palestinian cause. It's not about any of the things that Westerners have ever projected on it. It has always been singularly devoted to a destructive idea that the Jewish state should not exist. And only when the Palestinians as a people, just like the Germans are no longer Nazis, just like the Japanese no longer are the people of Imperial Japan, only when the people as a whole transform themselves away from a destructive cause to a constructive cause will we finally have peace.
Dr. Kandiah, is that how you see the long-term future? I mean, you represent a charity that helps refugees. So thinking of the human beings on all sides, is that how you see a long-term solution?
Thank you, Anna. I think it's very difficult to see a long-term solution. I see it at the moment just a terrible humanitarian disaster. What Hamas did in Israel is absolutely inexcusable. However terrible the situation may be in Gaza, it's never appropriate to murder and kidnap women and children. And as the news unfolds this week, just how terrible those atrocities were, I can fully understand the anger that's coming out of Israel. But the reaction to this terrible attack has really impacted civilians most of all. I think back to when I was a child. I grew up in Brighton, and the IRA bombed a Brighton hotel when the Conservative Party conference was there. The Westminster government did not then go and bomb Belfast, even though the IRA were embedded amongst the civilian population. It wasn't appropriate to do collective punishment. We didn't order Belfast to evacuate. Imagine trying to get millions of people out of Belfast at 24 hours notice. We didn't turn off the water or the electricity. So my fear is that civilians are carrying the weight of this. There is no way to poll the Palestinian population. They've not had a proper election. So to say that Palestinians are for Hamas, I think is unfair. I think about it this way. Imagine that you have two £20 notes in your wallet, and one of them has a Star of David on and the other has a Palestinian flag on. Which £20 note is more valuable? It's a stupid question. Every £20 note has the same value. Every human life has the same value. In Palestine right now, in Gaza, they estimate 40% of the population are children. That's somewhere in the region of 800,000 children who don't currently have access to water and electricity and food. I think we need to be asking the world to step up and to continue arguing for a humanitarian solution. We need that Rafah border open as soon as possible for aid to come in. Of course, we don't want it to go to Hamas, but we want it to go to civilians. But I think we also need a way for people to get out. It's a very small area that's been bombed continually, and there's no way for people to escape. There's no exit route. So they're stuck there facing this devastation.
Dr. Wilf, Dr. Krish makes some very valid points there. The argument I would put to you is, as you say, what you would like the future to look like, and for these people to stop wanting the absolute destruction of Israel as a state and as a nation, in the sense that, as Krish called it, sort of collective punishment, isn't there a real danger here that what you're actually doing is not changing the mindset of innocent Palestinians to be accepting of Israel, but you stand at least the chance of radicalising them against you?
So first, the parallel to understand the enormity of the threat, the enormity of the brutality, the hatred is not one Irish attack. The only way to understand it is to think about Nazi Germany, to think about Imperial Japan. Entire societies mobilized for the purpose of war, destruction, brutality, and the worst atrocities that humans can inflict on the other. That's what we're facing. We're not facing anything less than that. Now, one of the biggest problems in the way that people have thought about this issue for a century is the inversion of cause and effect. The Palestinian vision that the Jewish people have no right to self-determination, to be free people in any borders, in any part of the land, has not been ever affected by what Israel did, because it always was about what Israel was, the sovereign state of a free Jewish people. So we would like to think that if we do this or that, something will change. The thing that has fueled the Palestinian vision for over a century, that Israel is temporary, that the Jews will go, is first of all the numerical overwhelming ratio of 50-1 of Arabs to Jews in the region, and their sense that they only need to wait us out 1, 3, 5 generations, and then with enough violence.
Okay,
the line.
That line's gone, but I'll tell you what, we are running over, so we'll leave it there. But thank you both for your thoughts on that. I find it very interesting because I think Krish Kandiah makes some very valid points that a lot of people, I think, over here would sort of sympathise with. But it's when you hear that sort of I was going to say entrenched Jewish view, that lived Jewish view of saying, well, you know, they're trying to wipe us out entirely. There's a whole host of arguments here.
There's
it's
so
about
many.
Settlements on the West Bank and
it's about the sheer geography of the place. I mean, Israel seems to be surrounded by countries that have terrorist groups determined to do them down.
I mean, the problem is you could argue it through...
And that must be a terrible way to live.
Well, yeah, but you could argue the points that we've been arguing for, well, since 1948, couldn't you, on this one? But it's about how you sort of put that behind you and move forward.